The next knowledge session is foreign OEMs from exporters to partners. For decades, India was happy to import defense platforms. Not anymore. The stress is now on Make in India for the world. How are foreign OEMs reorienting towards local partnerships? What additional policy changes are required to support the new reality? These and more are going to be discussed in the panel discussion. I request our panelists and moderator to please come up. Mr. Kiran Dambala, Director, Air Mobility and Maritime Missions, Lockheed Martin. Mr. Andalip Shadman, Managing Director and Head of Business Development, Hensol Private Limited. Laura Vido, Country and Managing Director, Naval Group India Private Limited. Pierre De Kelly, Senior Vice President, Business Development, Safran Aircraft Engines. The moderator for this session is Amitabh Ravi, Associate Editor of stratnewsglobal.com. Can I have a round of applause for this wonderful panel, please? The keynote address was to be delivered by Dr. Vivek Lal, and he was in India. Unfortunately, he had to travel back due to exigent circumstances, but he has sent us a video message as the keynote address, which we will play now, after which I will hand over the session to Amitabh. Could we have Dr. Lal's video played, please?
Good evening. It's a pleasure and honor for me to be with you on this very important occasion. And thank you to Nitin Gokhale and the team for inviting me. At the outset, India's recent achievements in attaining self-sufficiency in the defense domain has indeed been outstanding. As an example, the new indigenous aircraft carrier Vikrant is a testament to India's shipbuilding industry and has catapulted India into the select group of elite countries which have the capability to manufacture aircraft carriers. India's capabilities in building nuclear submarines is a remarkable achievement, and these go hand in hand with Prime Minister Modi's vision of Make in India. As the Indian defense industry steadily marches towards the goal of Atmanirbhar, Indian R&D centers and manufacturing hubs are competing with the world's best, and it is really a testament to the leadership of various stakeholders, including the political, the bureaucratic, the industrial, the academic, and of course the very important end users, that all of this comes together. As you know, US and India have developed deep relations over the past 2 decades, spanning across economic, cultural, and political affiliations, and are poised for even greater cooperative efforts in the years to come. The challenges being faced by India can be said to have a butterfly effect on the rest of the world, and India's stature as a mature, responsive democracy is a very important stabilizing factor. This therefore makes India a top destination for future-ready companies to invest in and participate in the extraordinary growth that has been forecast for India. We at General Atomics are one of the world's leading companies specializing in defense and diversified research and technology development. With our large and varied capabilities ranging from unmanned aerial systems like the Guardian aircraft, electromagnetic launch and recovery systems, satellite surveillance, electromagnetic railgun, high-powered lasers, hypervelocity projectiles, power conversion systems, and thermonuclear fusion research through our internationally recognized D3D and inertial confinement programs. We are a leader of development of next-generation nuclear fission as well as high-temperature materials technology. India represents exciting opportunities for General Atomics, and we're looking forward to contribute to India's intelligence sharing, surveillance, and data sharing needs, along with participating in other defense and energy requirements for the country. As you know, this is a critical bilateral relationship, and moving forward in aerospace and defense it is certainly beyond routine manufacturing activities. High-end valued activities in terms of technology is very critical, like sensor development and ISR data management. And of course, I think as we move forward, we will see continued robustness in the relationship. I'd like to point out that persistent surveillance is very critical and very important to like-minded nations, and therefore robust data sharing between like-minded countries becomes very important. As you know, surveillance can be from space, airborne, surface, and so forth. However, I think moving forward, what is very important is the ability to correlate petabytes of available sensor data into a real-time operating picture. And that is not only for any one country, but a group of like-minded countries. I think another important aspect going forward will be in terms of constant training cooperation, in particular special forces skills. I think that'll be very critical going forward. I think also as we move forward, there needs to be an ability to deliver mass in numbers, especially loitering munitions. And finally, I think maintaining logistical dominance is very important. In the world we live in, it's becoming increasingly more of an important issue. So as we look at all these issues, it's very important that we work together in a collaborative manner. And I think the US and India relationship is indeed, with the largest and oldest democracies working together, a relationship that spans various aspects, not only manufacturing, but indeed R&D, innovation. And one shout out I'd like to give is to the startup companies in India, which have produced excellent results in terms of their ability to go to market in a very short time frame. And that too with the support of large, medium, small industries in India. I think the entire ecosystem is at an inflection point for growth, and I really wish the industry well as we continue to progress through higher technological collaborations. Again, I thank you for your time, and I thank the organizers for this important day.
Evening to everyone who's here, and a very good evening, warm welcome to all our panelists. Thank you for your valuable time. I'm sure all of us would have loved to have Dr. Lal here in person for more reasons than one. I, for one, would have definitely wanted to ask him a few questions about one of General Atomic's assets that has been leased to the Indian Navy and had an incident yesterday. But let's talk to the stellar panel, and I thought we'd start by just going across the panel. And if I can start with you, Pierre. If you want to talk about Safran in terms of, briefly, the history and the roadmap where you are currently in India.
Well, in addition to what our chairman said this morning, he was the first made in India. Our journey in India has really started like 65 years ago, where we completed a complete transfer of technology on the space rocket engine, which is called VCAS now. And that transfer of technology, I think, was really making India in advance, because thanks to this transfer of technology, nowadays India is fully autonomous in doing whatever India wants to do in the space. Whenever you want to launch a satellite or whatever, you are free to do it, and you do it by yourself without asking any question to anybody. And I think this was really the launching point for the Make in India. So we have now 70 years of experience in India, and I think I can say that we are proud being a key partner of the Indian aerospace and defense activity, not only in civil, but also in military. As you know, we are doing both civil and military assets. We have aligned us at Safran, and we are both sharing one ambition, is to support the fast-growing expansion of this market in India. We want to do it with the best support to the industry, but we also want to do it while serving the customers and bring the best support to the customer. This is one very key aspect, and this is also an aspect which is driving our activity in India, deliver the best possible support to our civil and to our military customers. We understand Make in India is a key, a cornerstone in the way to on the way to sovereignty for India. We are dedicated, and we are dedicated to enhance our effort to do this. Should it be through building up JVs? Should it be through full foreign direct investment? Should it be through, enlarging the supply chain? We are dedicated to set up a full ecosystem in India. Ecosystem meaning not only production, we are starting from education, design, development, production, and support. So we really want to set up something which will allow India to be absolutely self-sufficient, self-reliant.
Kiran, if you want to give a quick recap of Lockheed Martin's current and planned or potential future in India.
Thank you, Amitabh. So, Lockheed Martin has been here for 30 plus years and more than that. However, a pivotal moment was back in 2008-9 timeframe when Lockheed Martin actually decided to invest in India and build the infrastructure and actually do co-production here. And around the same time, we also delivered 6 and then later on another 6 C-130J aircraft to the Indian Air Force. Along with that, we built 2 Air Force bases as well to support the 2 fleets in those at those 2 bases. So the point I'm trying to make is the potential is huge, and the title here says from exporters to partners, you're looking at a partner right now. And I'm proud to say that I work for this company. I've been with Lockheed Martin more than 22 years. And right now, I'm with the Air Mobility and Maritime Missions team in Marietta, Georgia, which is where the production of C-130Js happen. However, until May of this year, for about 4 years, I was actually heading the joint venture of called Tata Lockheed Martin Aerostructures Limited, wherein we built the empennages and continue to build as a global single source. So imagine that, all the way from India back to the United States, all the supply chain, the logistics woes that we have to deal with. However, we've been successful in delivering on time through COVID. And given that success story, we were able to build a fighter wing for the F-21 fighter aircraft that now is in production, has already started production, slated for the first delivery in March of 2025, again, through COVID. That's the potential we have with this partnership that we have between Lockheed Martin and the companies in India, primarily Tata's, but we also have several MSMEs that we have developed along the way. Just imagine starting with 100% incumbent suppliers for the empennage in 2011-12 to now 96% indigenization happening here in India for a major complex aerostructure, which is the tail of the C-130J aircraft. Fast forward that to 2020, when through COVID, we're trying to get the prototype of the fighter wing for F-21 built here, and we ended up successfully indigenizing roughly 74% of the parts for the fighter wing right here in India on the prototype. That's the potential of having a partner like Lockheed Martin that leads directly to Atmanirbharta. And that's where Lockheed Martin's USP is, if you ask me, having dealt with more than 60 countries and having done co-production in several countries, final assembly line as we call it here, or FACO as we call it in other countries, that Lockheed Martin is capable of partnering with Indian companies, be it micro, small, medium, or a large conglomerate like Tata's. And that's the potential we're carrying forward with the future offerings we have that are currently in the talks between Lockheed Martin and Government of India.
Future F-22s, F-35s.
Absolutely.
Have you offered them? Have you offered them?
The F-21, yes.
Right.
F-21 is an offering, C-130J Super Herc is an offering right now, and proud to say that the Indian Air Force is extremely pleased, from everything I hear, that C-130J has been performing phenomenally well.
Cool. Andeep, if you want to, in a nutshell, just tell our audience about the applications or solutions that you have to offer or have on the anvil.
Sure. So Hensoldt, the name is new. This started somewhere in 2017. Before that, this was a part of the Airbus Defense and Space company as a part of the Defense Electronics business unit. We are a sensors company. We do sensors for airborne, for Navy, and for the land. So the two gentlemen who are sitting right and left to me, probably I could be the subcontractor or the partners for providing the airborne or a naval sensors. And that's exactly what we do in India. We are focusing on the ISR sensors, sensors to improve the safety of the flight, and sensors for the naval, especially the submarines. So these remains our broad level activities. One important remark, we have learned, let's say in the last years, especially since the release of DAP 2020, how important it is to include the Make in India or the indigenization requirement as a part of the company's strategy. And that's exactly what we have achieved so far. So most of our offer, most of our business that we do in India, we do taking into account the broader scheme of Make in India, indigenization, and all these regulatory requirements, utilizing and leveraging the Indian talents.
Laurent, many of us know about your presence here, but if you would like to again encapsulate it, and what are the possibilities in the future?
Thank you very much for having invited us. We are very happy to be part of this conclave. Before talking about the future, just a few words about the achievement of the past, which will be useful for the future. Since we are talking about this from exporter to partners, I think Naval Group is a perfect example of this achievement. Indeed, since 2005, when we enter in a contract with Mazagon Dock for the local manufacturing of 6 Scorpion submarine, from exporter, we have exported some key component of the submarine. We have provided some technical assistance to Mazagon Dock. And the reason I'm mentioning that, and I find it is an extraordinary achievement, is that from the 3rd to the 6th submarine, Mazagon has been able to manufacture these 4 submarines entirely alone, without any technical assistance from Naval Group, thus demonstrating a testimony of the full transfer of technology. The reason I insist on this is that very few people know that submarine construction is probably the most complex and difficult equipment to build. Just to give you an example, a fighter aircraft will require a few tens of thousands of hours to build. A submarine will require millions of hours. So the fact that Mazagon has been able in a few years to build this submarine entirely alone is a testimony of this transfer of technology. Now the future, we are working with our partners to develop the maintenance and the equipment necessary for the maintenance of these submarines. So we have qualified tens of MSMEs in the field of submarine construction and maintenance. And we have personally in Naval Group India invested in 2 workshops, one in Mumbai and one in Karwar, where the Scorpion submarine will be based. And we have workshops available to support Indian Navy in its maintenance task. And we are also developing in the future. We would like to go much further in the spares indigenization, which is a requirement of the Indian government. And so we are developing partnership with local companies. There are some policy issues regarding Indian Navy's ability to procure the spares directly from the qualified vendors without competitive bidding, and this is an issue. But more broadly, Naval Group is fully aligned in the vision of the Prime Minister and in line with the Horizon 2047 that has been signed between our 2 countries recently, and where, as Amiral Tripathi was saying, our goal through this Horizon 2047 is that Indian Navy will be fully self-reliant, not only for the manufacturing of the submarine, but also in the maintenance.
We'll actually flesh out those points that you brought up in the end a little bit more. But Pierre, transfer of technology, since that's a key word here. Now, you've been doing that, your company has been doing that for decades. Where from? Where now are you going to move?
Okay, just, you're right, we have started decades ago.
You mentioned that.
And to give you a flavor of what the current status is, I mean, we started, and we have to admit now, India is the fastest growing market in aeronautic and defense. Civil aviation, because we are both civil and military, civil aviation is intended to double within the 20 coming years, and Indian civil aviation will be the 3rd one in the world very soon. That's one thing. On the other side, we have supported this civil aviation through our JV, which is called CFM. And to give you a hint, we have more than 2,500 engines in the backlog to deliver to India. So definitely we need to support. And you'll see later on in my speech why I say support is very important. But not only civil aviation, military aviation also is a key part of our activity. And we are partnering to the Mirage 2000, which has been flown now in India for decades and which will still fly in India for decades, as well as for the Rafale. Similarly, not only delivery is important, but supporting is important, and supporting, I mean, being very close by to the customer. Another example is what we did in the helicopter engine activity. Quite a long time ago, we started a very strong partnership with HAL, where we did the co-development of helicopter engines, and all the helicopter manufactured in India, which are flying in India, are now equipped with the HAL and Safran engines. The latest one being called Shakti, we have delivered more than 600 Shakti nowadays. So I think this shows how strong the link and how strong the cooperation we have built up to now. Now let's take it to another step. I mean, I was mentioning this number of engines which we have in the backlog for the civil aviation. Last year, we, in that regard, have announced a significant investment, which is to build up the biggest ever MRO shop for LEAP engine that Safran has. We will build it up in India, here in Hyderabad, and it will start operation early next year. Similarly, we have also started building up an MRO shop for helicopter engine together with HAL. So that shows what we want to do, how we want to implement our partnership in India. We have also extended significantly our supply chain in India, and now India is about to manufacture one of the most important parts of our civil LEAP engine. And that's not only for the Make in India, every single LEAP engine in the world will fly with these parts. So this is how we really want to implement our partnership, with India, strengthen it, and then enhance it as well.
Kiran, the Prime Minister and other officials traveled to the US, I think, from the 21st. It was a Quad meeting there, Quad Summit, Leader Summit. In terms of India, US, the trajectory of relationship that has moved, what does Lockheed Martin have to offer to catapult India to, say, the next level?
So, thank you for bringing up the question about the visit and the relations, G2G relations. US has elevated India to a major defense partner status. Along with that, they've also granted the strategic trade authorization to Indian companies, or for Lockheed Martin, companies like Lockheed Martin to work with Indian companies. So what Lockheed Martin has done, through the joint venture, of course, has actually leveraged the STA1 authorization that we have, and we've been able to literally expedite the supply chain lead times, which would have otherwise impeded us by having to go to the Department of Commerce or the Department of State and apply for licenses, wait for approvals. So in order to accelerate the production in India, Lockheed Martin has been able to leverage, again, the MSMEs, given the licensing that we have in place with them, or the STA1, but we've also been able to develop the same suppliers who otherwise did not have certain certifications like AS9100 or NADCAP certifications, any others, that would actually allow us to do business with them. So this is the role that Lockheed Martin has been able to play with the Indian supply chain in order to develop an actual ecosystem, and not just confine ourselves to a narrow path, right? And that has enabled us to actually, over the years, export more than 330 million from just one venture we have in Hyderabad. More to come, of course. But what I wanted to say is, this is from exporters to partners. The export has been from this end over to the US. Over to you.
Andeep, I just wanted to ask you, in terms of new partnership models, what do you think, say, OEMs and Indian industry can explore to, one, to ensure technology transfer, and two, that the business models are, of course, viable?
Okay, deeper question. So a little bit of I think let's go back into the past. All the foreign OEMs, I think initially, we all started doing business in India mostly by selling the fully furnished stuff, maybe decades before. That was the norms, and when, like every other country, when India and our country also realized that how important it is to be self-reliant in defense, and I just put a star mark, self-reliance in defense doesn't mean that the foreign OEMs would be out. This will definitely be there, but maybe the mode of the engagement would be different. So then the next logical step was to do a lot of build to print or a manufacturing. I think we have crossed that stage. We are now somewhere in the next stage where many of the foreign OEMs are trying, like Hensoldt, which we call it a build to specs or kind of a co-development. This is a little bit more sharing, and I would say a sharing of the technology and the sharing of the risks as well. And this apparently seems to be the model which would be fitting perfectly with the most sought after Indian procurement category called IDDM. So that's exactly is the roadmap, and that's how, in my opinion, things should be shaped.
Laurent, you mentioned it in your last answer, but in terms of sustainability, because it's not just about whether it is design or production, there's a stage that comes later. You were mentioning some issues that you were having with, say, spares or maintenance contracts. If you want to elaborate on that.
Yes. As you know, the maintenance of a submarine is a very important aspect of the operational availability of the submarine, and it has to be done for 30 years. And there is a lot of spares to be used during every short refit or normal refit. As you know, the Prime Minister has demanded that all the spares are manufactured in India and no longer imported. So we have been working with some partners. We have been proposing some transfer of technology to locally manufacture some important and sensitive spares which have an impact on the safety of the submarine. And the problem we all encounter, and this is not only a foreign OEM problem, it is mostly also an Indian industry problem. Nobody wants to invest in TOTs, qualification, and certification, because this has a cost. And certifying an industry for a particular equipment can take 1 or 2 years. And this involves investment from both the foreign OEM, if he wants to bear some of the cost, and mostly the Indian partner who needs to demonstrate the qualification of the spares. The problem everybody encounters in India is that the Indian Navy, and I suppose it's the same for all armed forces, the Indian Navy is bound to follow the defense procurement policies, and these procurement policies impose competitive bidding on almost all procurement. And so the Indian Navy is a bit, has his hands a bit tied and cannot directly go to the qualified vendor in a single tender basis. And they have to put in competition qualified vendors who have necessarily more expensive item, more expensive spares, because they need to amortize the investment they have made. And when you are put in competition with another company who has not gone through the qualification process, you are necessarily L2 or L3, and you cannot compete. So this has hampered the development of spares indigenization. We have raised the issue, it's a policy issue. It penalizes all the local industry. We could go much further if there was a commitment from the Indian Navy to procure the qualified spare only from the qualified vendors.
Understood. Pierre, in terms of hurdles, problems, issues, the word, you can choose the word you want to use, what are you looking for in terms of policy? And you mentioned a point earlier about, is it linkages between civilian and military aircraft? I mean, is there a flow that goes, it should be first investment in civilian and then it moves to military or defense? Is that the point you were trying to make?
Thank you, Amitabh, for raising that point. I think this is probably one of the most important points for us, from our viewpoint, when we're trying to really set up this ecosystem in India. Well, when Indian government started the program, the Atmanirbhar Bharat program, together with this, the Indian government has set up some schemes to support this. One of the latest one being to adapt the GST on the MRO, and that was in 2020. And I was lucky to be part of the team together with airline representative and other representatives to work on that subject. And I must say, I mean, since 2020, when that new law happened, I mean, MRO is really now growing in India. So that's a very positive point which the government has managed. In addition to other ones, which was, I mean, allowing an easy FDI access when we're talking about civil, increasing the percentage of FDI for the military from 24 to 49 to 74, and that has helped. But yes, we need some more. You were mentioning this leakage in between civil and military. I would like to come on one very important point, which is the policy on offset and make in India. You know, let's start with a few statements. I mean, my industry, our industry, the engine manufacturing industry is quite capital intensive. It requires lots of capital. That's one statement. On the other side, if we look at military and civil market is quite predictable. You can very accurately determine what the civil market will be in 20 years. On the other side, military market is more linked on the political, the geopolitics, which is happening everywhere in the world. So it's not so easy to really predict this. Since our industry requires lots of capital investment, it's much easier to invest and build up an ecosystem on the basis of the civil applications. Of course, what we're doing on the civil will benefit to the military. The technologies are similar. Whatever the technology we're using on civil, we will use the same kind of technology on military. So there is a direct link. Basically, when we're investing for civil application, we are indirectly investing for military application. And in that regard, I think instead of looking the offsets and the Make in India purely on a program-by-program basis, I think what would definitely help foreign OEMs to invest further and start investing is to really look at the offset and Make in India policies, which are actually the good way to manage, you know, taking people here, bringing investment here, but looking at this as a holistic approach and considering that we have to build up an ecosystem, that the ecosystem will address both. So when we're investing on one side, I mean, similar technology will be used. One good example is 20 years ago, we started a JV with HAL, which is doing all the piping of all the civil engines. So we've done this. It has been so successful that last year we doubled the size and moved to another place, that's in Bangalore, to be able to further produce additional capacities. This piping, which we started on civil, will also now be dedicated to military applications. So that's really what I'm looking for from additional or enhanced, improved policies. Look at a holistic ecosystem viewpoint and not only on a program-by-program point. The other thing, and I think there was a panel which was dedicated to MSMEs. I cannot highlight how much MSMEs are important. I mean, for India, I think in the aeronautic and defense activity, there are more than 5,000 to 6,000 MSMEs working that. But for us, as a foreign OEM, MSMEs are very important because they are more dedicated on a given set of technologies. They are not, you know, addressing a very wide range of technologies. So for us, they are very keen, and we are willing to invest and grow with MSMEs. However, first of all, the qualification of MSME has to be looked at very carefully, because when we start investing and working with an MSME, very soon it might not be any MSMEs anymore. That's very important. And the government has set up a rule for the offset policy where when we're working with an MSME, there is a multiplier. I mean, we should look also, and the government should think about having the same multiplier when talking about the Make in India, because this is an additional incentive for us to invest and work together with MSMEs.
Kiran, when we come to the Indian Air Force, I mean, it's well known about the need for the sanction strength, which is not there, as well as replacement. What does Lockheed Martin have to offer if you look at the whole cycle, from concept to development to production to sustainability for the Indian Air Force?
So your question is, in general, what does Lockheed Martin have to offer in terms of
The whole
the whole
cycle.
life cycle. Yeah. Just the subject matter expertise, which essentially Lockheed Martin has proved by way of doing the work in India with the subject matter experts from Lockheed Martin in the US, literally coming in as expats for years on end, sitting in with the workforce that our joint venture partner Tata Aerospace and Defense had actually hired and recruited. And one of the key conduits, if you will, was by way of actually setting up the tooling here in India. Some of it definitely that was shipped, but a lot of the tooling expertise that was built here in India with, again, with MSMEs, like I brought up earlier, and setting it up here. And another key conduit of, since you mentioned concept development and production and then eventually sustainment, was building the subject matter expertise of the Indian workforce here through digitization of the components, the complex components that we built here that actually made the engineering community here self-sufficient, and by way of the engineering community becoming self-sufficient, made our supplier community self-sufficient to the extent that they were able to take the digitized models that were actually guided by the Lockheed Martin subject matter experts with the help of the Indian engineers digitizing here at the joint venture, and eventually standing up, hand-holding the supplier base to be able to produce in an efficient manner and literally have no quality escapes. You know? And the kind of quality escapes we've had are very minimal, but even they were not catastrophic in any shape or fashion. But the point I'm trying to make here is that chain, right from the Lockheed Martin subject matter expertise all the way through our partnership here in India with Tata and the MSMEs, is what Lockheed Martin brings to the table. And I heard this morning that people-centric development is an extremely important element if we are going to be Atmanirbhar. You know, it cannot be just components and manufacturing and infrastructure and all that. So that people-centric development is what Lockheed Martin already has proved and will continue to grow that chain.
Andeep, how can foreign OEMs contribute to a robust R&D ecosystem?
I think if I talk about R&D, I could clearly say that this is one of the area where a private sector in India definitely need to improvise. And I would see things are improving day by day, but I think there's a long way to go. I just take an example from the German industry, what they call it Mittelstand, the MSMEs, where there are smaller companies, let's say 20, 30, 50 people, many of them, each one of them is highly specializing into a very niche R&D and a production. And probably these are the kind of companies which are driving the economy of the whole country, maybe up to 50% I heard. Again, to reiterate, R&D is something I'm coming up with a little bit experience of running the first defense R&D center in India in my past. So yes, there are a lot of challenges. Maybe for the foreign OEM, they may prefer to do R&D in their own subsidiary to begin with. Maybe there are some limitations in sharing the key know-how with the other company, you know, to begin with. So I think if we and let me say the recommendation or thought that came to my mind is, if we somehow allow a defense foreign OEM to start doing a little bit more R&D in India, and somehow through policy incentivizing it, probably that's the best way to bring a technology in India.
Laurent, when you talked about submarines again, if I can use the word weak point for the Indian submarine industry and history has been design. What is the scope for transfer of technology from the design stage to the delivery stage in the future?
It is true that the first experience with the Indian Navy was for a transfer of technology of manufacturing the submarine. Future program will involve co-development, co-design, and co-manufacturing. You know, this is part specifically, this issue is specifically mentioned in the Horizon 2047, which there are only 2 countries signatories. The Indian government has signed such agreement with only 2 countries, and France is one of them. And in this Horizon 2047, if you read it, it is clearly mentioned that the 2 countries will have to work together to co-design, co-develop, and co-manufacture equipment. And submarine is one of the equipment, if I dare say, use the term equipment, is one of the projects that is mentioned in this Horizon 2047. So yes, we are working and we will be working on that path. We are already working in research and development with the DRDO. The theme of this forum is from exporter to partners. We are not trying to sell or impose our equipment. I'll give you just one example. We have air independent propulsion in France. We can propose such a system. We have decided to go and work with the DRDO, and we are helping the DRDO to integrate and to design, and they are designing their AIP so that it can be safely integrated in the Scorpion. We are also working with the DRDO for underwater weapon integration of their weapon inside the Scorpion. So yes, the future is not only manufacturing, but co-designing, co-manufacturing.
And I think AIP is by 2026. Is what
AIP
we have been told.
is, yes, very soon to be available. It's in advanced stage of development by the DRDO and should be integrated in the Scorpion in the next few years.
Pierre, for both sides, in a perfect world, how can it be win-win?
I like the work win-win because it's really the way we should work. When I started my career, I was told, and the very first day I started being, in sales, marketing and sales, an old chap told me, Pierre, never forget that a good deal is a win-win deal. Both parties should be happy. The way to do it here in India, I think, is, for us, we are dedicated, and I'm joining Laurent on that. We are dedicated to co-design, co-develop, transfer not only the production, but the design capability, development capability, support capability. So I think this is our aim. We are aiming at that. We are supported, and all of France is doing this. To make it a real win-win, adapting the policy to support our effort would be very important. As a reward, not only the ecosystem will not only serve the Indian need, but it will also serve the full export need. And I would be very happy to see more civil engine flying with more Indian parts. And that's how I see the win-win point on that.
In your experience, whether it's positive, negative, impediments, in terms of the whole ecosystem like he's talking about within India, whether it's the workforce, whether it's the availability of talent, if you want to share your company's views on that.
So this is a powerhouse of talent. The pool of talent that you can find in India is literally unimaginable. So, however, with that comes, with opportunity comes a challenge of attrition. So there's always, grass is greener on the other side. You know, however, I've always claimed that the kind of work we do at our joint venture, and even other ventures that we have in that same vicinity, which are also some of the other joint ventures that Tata Group has, is doing some very complex work. But unfortunately, what happens is the attrition is not so much that it's one way, it's kind of a rotation pool. So some leave, some others come back. So the challenge is, again, retraining the workforce in order to make sure that we can meet the demand of our customers in terms of the delivery timelines and the quality that we have to maintain, which is 100% quality, 100% on-time delivery. So what we have done, and while I was at the joint venture, is actually had some informal programs and some formal programs by way of actually recruiting a lot of the workforce from rural areas, having them train through some campuses, some school campuses that eventually will get them ready, ahead of ready, if you will, for us to leverage them as a pool of talent. Since your question was literally about talent, I wanted to make sure I addressed that.
Anjali, when you look at defense programs and how complex they're getting, how can OEMs balance global standards with local content requirements and not compromise either on quality or cost?
It's a multidisciplinary optimization problem, let me say it like this. So the challenge for the global OEM is definitely to be in the cost, to win, number one. Then meet the indigenous content by selecting the right partner, doing the right transfer of technology, doing the right things in terms of the quality and schedule. And sometimes this is extremely challenging to balance everything together. One of the way to do a little bit, let's say, ease out this is to not to look India as simply the buyer or the market, but maybe as a partner. For example, if I am working with a company A, and I am not working with the company A for a project A, but maybe in a larger scale for a certain type of a technology which could be used in a project A, but which could also be used in a project B, may not be in India, somewhere else. Probably that kind of a model gives me the economy of scale. It also justifies some kind of an investment in the business case. And probably in the countries, for example, Hensoldt, in Germany, there is definitely the dearth of the resources and hiring and finding the right people. Probably with the greenfield country like us, where we can, I fully compliment on the Kiran, where he said that I would just say it again, that there are really a gem of the company present in India. You just need to scout for them, And
I'll give the final word to you. Panel, we are talking about from export to partners, but what if I add another couple of words and say from export to partners to exports? In terms of, tell us about the MOU with Mazagon Docks for exports to, potentially exports to friendly countries, to third friendly countries. Where does it stand? How does it work?
Yes, it is not only with Mazagon Dock, it's also with other Indian shipyards. We have signed MOUs so that we can jointly manufacture the submarine from Mazagon Docks for friendly neighboring countries, and there are a few interested to have a Scorpion submarine, and there is also such a similar MOU with Garden Ridge, to mention it, to manufacture OPV for other friendly countries. And just one last message I wanted to pass. This is important because the industrial ecosystem that has been created, for example, for the Scorpion, needs to be sustainable. And you need regular order to maintain the skills and the expertise on these industries.
So Laurent, Adlib, Kiran, and Pierre, I thank you all for gracing this occasion and sharing your experiences and expertise. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Amitabh. May I please request Amitabh to present mementos to our panelists. A memento to Mr. Pere Dikeli, Senior Vice President, Business Development, Safran Aircraft Engines. To Mr. Kiran Dambala, Director, Air Mobility and Maritime Missions, Lockheed Martin. To Mr. Andalib Shadman, MD, Hensoldt India. And to Mr. Laura Vido, Country and Managing Director, Naval Group India Private Limited. Thank you. A more spirited applause, please, for this panel. Thank you. And can we quickly pose for a group photograph, after which we will have the fireside chat with the Chief of Defence Staff.